Hello guys, before we go into this Wi-Fi mesh, that is the ESP protocol, a fascinating aspect of this Wi-Fi mesh network is their self-healing capability. That is, if one node fails or get disconnected, the network dynamically can reroute through traffic through their availability nodes without any interruption. So that is what makes this an ESP mesh a unique one. And if you see this ESP Now, is a protocol which is developed by the ESP systems, which is commonly used in the ESP8266 and the ESP32 devices for the past peer-to-peer communication between them without you require any Wi-Fi access points or routers. So it's efficient, low power, and it is great for IoT application. So in today example, what is that we will be seeing is we will be trying to get two different values from two different ESP32, and we can see this value in a separate ESP32 device. So this two will act as a sender or a slave which will have a communication with the master so that we can able to view the sensor reading. So if you see this in the previous video where I have showed you hardware demo, today I will just explain the code and I will update the code in the GitHub link. So if you see the necessary libraries, so we need ESP now, Wi-Fi and DHT for DHT11. If you are trying to use an ultrasonic sensor or any other sensor, you need to include your library there. And then we need to define the pin here. Obviously, we are going to connect DHT11 to the fourth pin of the ESP32. So that is where I have mentioned here. And here I am going to initialize the DHT sensor. And then I need to have the broadcast address of my receiver. So this you need to find the receiver address, and there I will upload the link also to find the MAC address of an ESP device. So that is the MAC address which you need to mention it here. And the next important thing is the structure to hold the sensor data. So this should be a unique one, so it should not be different, because whatever structure you are writing it in the sender should be same even for the receiver. So that is the one point which I want you guys to understand it here. So if you see this int id, because we will be using a couple of ESP32, so I will name it one ESP as 1 and another ESP as 2. If you want 3 to 4, you should able to name it here. And then I am going to have the float temperature and humidity. So this is a simple structure, and I am naming this structure as my data because this is that information which I want to send. And this is the inbuilt function which is used for the peer information sharing. So that is the one which I am using it for sharing. Then there is a callback function to handle the data transmission status, because I need to send the data to my master. So that is the void on data sent. I'm going to send the MAC address and the status. What is that? So if it successfully sends the data, then I get a message as delivery success, or else I get a message as delivery file. And in the setup file, we need to have this for serial communication, and the DHT begin for initializing the DHT sensor. And I'm going to start my ESP32 in a station mode, and then is what I need to initialize the ESP Now protocol. So that is where I initialize the ESP Now protocol, and then the function whatever I am returning it here, I'm going to call it here in the setup. So then I'll be using the peer receiver detail. So this mem copy is a function, and if you see the official ESP32 file, so there if you see this under the examples under the ESP32, so there again you have a ESP Now. So there they would have used a different configuration parameter. So it is just to copy the details so that the message whatever you send is being received by the proper receiver. So here the channel what I am going to use is 0. If you are going to use 1, it should be same for all the programming part. Here I am not going to encrypt any messages. So in case if you want your transmission to be more secured, so there you can do this kind of an encryption. So here it is false. And then what is that I'm going to do? Then it is going to add the peer network, that is in the mesh we call it as a node or peer. So this I'm going to add the peer information. If it is success, then it is okay, or else I get the message as failed to add peer. And in the loop what is that I'm going to do is I'm going to get the temperature and humidity value. So that is the one float T and float H, and then I'm going to print the sensor reading to the serial monitor just for my understanding. And here is where you guys need to be a bit careful. So if I want to send the data from one ESP32, it should be one. If I have another ESP32, so there I need to make it as my ID is 2. If you want it for 3 more devices, so you need to mention it as 3 4. So for my cases I have only 2 ESP32 which is there in the room 1 and room 2. So where I'm going to get the information, so that is where I use this value. So it needs to be same. If you compare both the codes of ESP sender 1 and ESP sender 2, both are same, only difference is this ID which will be different. So that is how easy is your programming. So you are going to set the value as 1, temperature as T, and data humidity as H, and then is where you are going to send the sensor data using the ESP now. So here you are going to use the ESP now send function to send. If it is success, you get the message as ESP is equal to OK, and then you have the sent with success. Or else if there is any distance or if there is any um, hindrance, so you get the message as error sending the data, and you have a delay of around 2 seconds which you can minimum which you can minimize or which you can maximize depending upon your need. So that is the example of the ESP sender 1, and same if you see the sender 2, it is obviously the same code. Everything needs to be same, just this particular information, that is the my data.2. So this is how the sender 1 and sender 2 file looks. If you see this is the receiver file which I will use to receive it. And since I am using an TTGO display, I'm using this particular TFT SPI. If you want to display it in a OLED screen or any kind of a screen, you can change the library needed. So that is why I am initializing the TFT display, and the same structure whatever I have used it in the receiver should be mentioned here. And there this is my data which I have created, that is the struct message. My data is the one data which I will collect, and if I want to have 3 boards or 4 boards, so that is where you need to initialize this board. In case if you have 3 different rooms or 3 different sensor values which you need to collect, so you can able to mention it here. So that is how we are going to do that. And then we have an array to hold the data for multiple boards. So that is how you do it. And then we are using the on data receiving. So previously it was sending, here it was receiving. So again MAC address followed by the data and the length of the data. So this is the callback function executed when the data is received. So MAC address is very much important. So that is where you need to use the MAC address. Same thing, we need to copy this data, whatever data we receive, it should be copied to the address, and that we can able to retrieve it. So that is where we use this memcopy my data incoming data and what is its size. So that is what we need to mention it here. And the serial.printf, we will be getting the board ID, that is from board 1 or board 2 or room 1 or room 2, whatever you have configured, you get the details. And then I need a memory to store the data. So since why I am used this -1 is since array starts with a 0, so that is where, to not to confuse, I have used this concept of -1. If it is obviously board 1, so 1 minus 1 is what you get it as 0. So obviously it is from board 1 you get data, and that data it is going to store it in the board struct.0.temperature. So that is why when I try to print it, we can able to print the data, that is from one ESP32 I get its temperature and humidity, in other I get the temperature and humidity. So coming to the setup file, you need to initialize this TFT display, and there and these are all the codes which is suited for my ESP32 TTGO display. If you are using ESP32 with OLED, so then you need to change this code. Again, I need to set my Wi-Fi in the station mode, followed by the ESP now initialization. Then I will be using this callback function like on data receiving. So that is how you can able to do that. At the end, I will be using some variable to store the data so that I can able to view it on my screen, so which you can see it here. So there I'm going to store the data from board 1x, 1y, that is the temperature and humidity. In case if you need 3 boards or 4 boards, you can extend it by using this parameters like 3x and 3y. Then I'm going to get the detail and I'm going to print it on my screen, so that in a place without me needing any Wi-Fi or any kind of an internet services, I can able to get the data on my screen. So that is how this ESP now or Wi-Fi mesh protocol works. Thank you guys. File